Hello there. I'm from England, and welcome to the grand opening and inaugural episode of the Academy of Imperfection, a conversational lecture series where experts in their field will share their valuable wisdom on the subject of imperfection. So find a seat, open your notebooks, and join students Hugh, Ryan, and Josh as they, on behalf of the Imperfects, welcome today's very special guest lecturer, Ben Crowe.
Well, we are very excited to have our inaugural guest lecturer in Ben Crowe. Very exciting for so many reasons. I mean, Ben is...
Well, before we go into Ben, because
Okay.
I don't want to jump in too quickly, but this is the inaugural. Yes, it's the inaugural lecture, but it's also the inaugural episode of the Academy of Imperfection.
True.
So
yes.
we should just give him a little bit of, I don't know, a description. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but we may as well.
Ben Crowe is someone who we speak about a lot in the podcast, and we thought, wouldn't it be great to have Ben on?
Well, lots of experts.
Well, this is. Hang on, I've got this. I've got this.
I don't know why. I'm nervous because Ben's here.
I'm nervous because you're nervous.
Sorry, everybody. Okay, sorry, Hugh. I'll stop jumping in.
So we had access to Ben, and we thought, wouldn't it be great for Ben to do an episode of the Imperfects? But we thought, whilst Ben has an imperfect journey that he could share with us, he's also got this unbelievable, this infinite well of wisdom and insight that it would just be a crime to not share with our audience. So we thought, well, and we've got a lot of people like that. Not a lot, a few people like that we'd love to share with our audience. So instead of getting them to come on, be vulnerable, and then give like a little insight, a small insight into everything they know, we thought, why not come up with a format where they're actually allowed to just come in here and just talk. And it's like we're going back to school. Josh, Ryan, myself, we're the students. We've got a guest lecturer in, and today we are absolutely thrilled to have Ben Crowe, who has now, is that good?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
Josh.
really
Okay,
happy.
good. Okay,
Excellent.
Yeah, works.
Approved.
okay, good.
I feel like everyone listening is like nodding their heads going, yeah, no, I get it now. Get it now. Now you get the guest in.
So
3 years into this podcast.
We are getting slick.
How long have you got for this episode, by the way? The intro is going to go for an hour.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
It is a problem of ours.
yeah, it is something we struggle with. But so I feel like the name Ben Crowe and probably Brene Brown are the two we probably drop most in this podcast. So it's very excited to have Ben Crowe here. Ben, I'll let you talk people through your journey and your, how you've got to where you are now. But just to give a little bit of context, you've worked with people like Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras, Tiger Woods, Shane Warne, Cathy Freeman, Ash Barty, Steph Gilmore, Hugh van Cuylenburg, and Ryan Shelton.
Oh, wow.
Just to round that off.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So how has your journey got you to the point where you are working with those people? And I feel like I'd love to sit back and listen to you talk for the next hour, but we'll kind of jump in. The things we'd love to talk about with you, the themes, I guess, generally are imperfection, why it's important to embrace your imperfection, understanding that you are worthy of love and belonging, no matter who you are or how you're traveling in life. And also, we could not round out the conversation by talking about purpose and having a purpose and a purpose mindset, because when we mentioned that on Ryan's episode, it just blew up our socials and everyone wanted to know more about it. And so I didn't feel comfortable speaking about it. And it's what you do so beautifully. So they're the kind of three things we'd like to touch on today, or the three themes.
Yep.
But your journey, how did you start working with those people, and what are you doing now when you work with people?
So the Nike journey, and probably go before that, maybe a few years before the Nike journey. My dad died when I was in year 11, and I guess from that process onwards, I always had this interest in finding purpose and meaning and perspective in life, and also probably finding role models and people to help me along that journey. I was the youngest of six. I guess both my brothers are doctors and sisters are teachers and nurses and so forth. And I probably want to be a wannabe of all those things, if you like. And as we discussed off air, you can only join the dots looking back on your life. So there's no sequential order to where I got to, I guess, what I'm doing now. And then from there, I went to university and I studied philosophy, anthropology, and English. And I remember thinking at the time, when the hell am I ever going to use these three disciplines? And fast forward 30 years, and what I didn't realize at the time is philosophy is the study of wisdom, anthropology is the study of humans and human behavior, and English, I guess, effectively the study of storytelling. And then from there, I then joined Nike, which is effectively a storytelling company. Yeah, and that's its competitive advantage against the Germans, as we used to call them, Adidas and Puma and so forth. And it was very much, that was the competitive advantage was the connection to athletes, which is very much its priority, if you like, and its storytelling element. Whether it's Live Strong or Air Jordan or Just Do It, that was the emotional connection of the athlete and the storytelling, and that's where I guess I learned just the power of storytelling, if you like. And my job initially in Australia, it was a very African-American company, Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley. We didn't have any local heroes at the time. And this is the early 1990s. So my job was to identify, sign, and then work with athletes to help them tell their stories better, if you like. So Cathy Freeman was the first athlete that we signed up. Shane Warne was the second. Wayne Carey was the third. Leighton Hewitt. And then from there, I did the same thing internationally in Asia and then globally as well. And that's where I had my first aha that in order to be a good storyteller, you needed to know your own story first. And most athletes don't, and most of us don't, if you like. And so when I left Nike a few years later, it kind of took me on this curiosity to see whether a deep focus on understanding your story and learning to be a good human first could actually help athletes not only compete better, but also retire better as well. And I guess when I came back to Australia, I guess I was doing it as a hobby more so than a career. And that hobby has probably just got a bit more pronounced over the last 5 or 6 years. It's kind of led to me what I'm doing now, I guess, full time with Mojo Crowe.
Yeah.
Was Nike using that storytelling method even before that dream, like that Jordan era?
Very much so. Yeah.
Wow.
I think that was it. Nike's purpose is to bring innovation and inspiration to every athlete in the world. If you're talking about purpose, and they innovate through product development. They inspire through storytelling, if you like. When you think about it, there's no rational reason why you three love your favorite song or your favorite movie or your favorite sporting team. It's an irrational emotional connection we have with that in the entertainment economy. And the way to get that emotional connection, the best, is through storytelling. And that's why movies is the number one form of entertainment anywhere in the world, because they tell the best stories, if you like. And I think that was, you've got to have a good product behind the story as well. But I guess that's where I cut my teeth and understood the power of storytelling.
Amazing.
But also the downsides if you believe that story is real. And this is this whole separation between the person and the persona is what we call Messiah mentality. So you think of the fall from grace from, say, a Lance Armstrong or a Tiger Woods. It's great to be put up on that pedestal from a storytelling point of view. And obviously you can commercialize that and make an enormous amount of money out of that. But what's critically important is to realize that's not real.
Yeah.
If you believe that's real for 1 second, you're going to be distracted by all the extrinsic elements that comes with fame and money and materialism and so forth.
So do you mean if the athlete believes that?
Correct. If the athlete believes it's real. So they've got to be able to separate their self-worth away from, that's what they do, but it's not who they are. Because if it becomes if you believe you're the Messiah, for example, then you're going to have this hubris kind of extraordinary perspective on life or lack of perspective on life.
Yeah.
And when you fall from that, the fall is huge, as so many of these athletes have found out along the way. So, I think, and probably we didn't do a great enough job at Nike of educating athletes between what is real and what isn't real, so they didn't get distracted along the way, and they could, have that humility, realize they put on their jeans one leg at a time like everyone else. And without that perspective, you can get really, really distracted. And that's kind of what's happening today on not just for athletes, but all of us. We're getting so distracted by these extrinsic elements and believing they're real.
You also work with a lot of people who are not elite athletes, and embracing your imperfections is a big part of that. Can you kind of talk us through that? I guess, why do you like the name of our podcast so much is another way of answering that question.
Well,
Make it about us.
You guys, I've said this publicly. When you guys launched the Imperfects, for me, that's one of the greatest issues on the planet today, is the disconnection caused by wanting to be perfect or believing in perfection, which is effectively this external manifestation that can't ever be achieved. It's not real. It doesn't exist. It's bullshit. And while you can be in search of excellence and self-improvement, in search of perfection is caring so much what others think of you and trying to be that person and trying to fit into that element. And with perfectionism comes fear and comes ego and all these elements. And it's just not real because life is imperfect. And the great irony, the counterintuitive element of that is it's our imperfections that connect humans the most. The reason why your podcast is so good is because we hear these stories of vulnerability and overcoming adversity, and we relate in such the most beautiful way. And that's how we want to feel ourselves. We want to be authentic and be real and be humble and be imperfect and know that's okay. But the generation that's growing up right now, through a whole lot of macro reasons, is getting caught up in this perfection myth, and we can't live up to it, and we can't control it either. So the downside of that is a whole series of mental health challenges as a consequence of believing in perfection. And rather than realizing you think about 12 months ago with the bushfires in Australia, right? Suddenly we got off our banana lounges and taking selfies of our feet, and we started caring about the country burning down. Australia was imperfect 12 months ago, and we started caring about the welfare of animals and country communities, right? It was the imperfection of that situation that brought Australians together again. Mm-hmm. And you think about the pandemic, right? On exactly the same issue. It created the most beautiful sense of humility and humanity as a consequence of the negativity that come across it. So once you embrace imperfection, and more importantly, embrace your own imperfections, we call that thing embracing your weird, if you like. But once you realize it's the little things, the nuances, the idiosyncrasies, the self-deprecating humor that comes through comedy, all these things, we call them imperfections, but that's what connects humans the most. And that's authentic, and it's real, and it's humble, and it's raw, and it's messy. But that's where the gold is, if you like. And I think we've just lost perspective on that because we're caring so much about what others think about us, or afraid to make a mistake in terms of how we live our lives, and that, the helicopter generation of parents. And I think that, the whole world needs to embrace imperfection far more. So we need your podcast to go global really, really quickly and kind of spread the word. And that's why Brene Brown is absolutely one of my heroes, is because she, probably better than anyone I've ever seen, packaged up vulnerability in a way that could be explained, and then explained the consequences of perfection myth and the scarcity mentality, which is that feeling that I'm not good enough or loved enough or whatever it is, not enough, if you like, as the two kind of pillars that's driving this shame epidemic. And the antidotes is literally to celebrate your imperfections, but also to celebrate that unconditional self-worth that I am enough. I'm imperfect and I'm full of struggle, but I am worthy of love and connection and belonging.
I'd love to go into that a bit more, because I remember when the first time we caught up having coffee in Hawthorne together, and I think I relayed to you, I'd had an email from someone who'd come and see me speak, and it was just so much negative feedback, and it was really quite brutal. And I was telling you, I wished I didn't care, but I did. And I was trying to talk that through with you, and you grabbed my jumper quite forcefully and said, "You are worthy of love and belonging as you are right now." And it hit me so hard, and I was felt quite teary. Just, I don't know what hit me so hard, but it was just this thing of gosh, I do feel like I'm so desperate for, I say desperate's the right word, but I think it's all of us. We're so keen for everyone to like us and approve of us, and so much so that sometimes I don't think we even approve of ourselves, if that kind of makes sense. And I just, you saying that to me hit me very hard, and it's been with me, ever since. So I'm keen to sort of explore that more for people to understand what that actually means, that you are worthy of love and belonging as you are.
Just before you answer, I remember you told me that, Hugh, you told me that story before I met with Ben, and I was like, God, I hope he grabs my jumper. I was like, God, I hope I get the treatment.
I don't think I did grab your jumper.
No, you definitely didn't. Yeah. No, you didn't. But you definitely didn't. I walked away going, that's all right. It was still really good. I didn't get the Goodwill Hunting moment. But,
that's very funny. Yeah, I don't remember getting that. I don't remember grabbing your jumper, Hugh. So I apologise if
no, but we were leaning forward it was a small table. We were leaning forward, and I was so engaged in what you're saying. It wasn't like a huge effort to do it. I was right there, so it wasn't like you weren't smashing cutlery over to get to me. I was right there, so it was like
cleared the table.
Yeah, I'm not trained in this space, and I probably get more real and raw at times. But also, and to say this publicly, the work that you and Ryan and Josh are doing with the Imperfects, I'm in awe of, right? And I love mentoring, and I've loved the sessions with you guys, but I get more out of it than you do. And for me, what you're talking about, you are worthy of love and connection. For me, that's the number one issue on the planet right now, is unconditional love. And the consequences of putting conditions on our love means we'll never ever get there. And for me, that's literally killing the world right now. The lack of unconditional love. My hypothesis is we don't know ourselves enough, and the bits we do know we don't like or love ourselves enough, not good enough, loved enough, smart enough. As a consequence, we're kind of going external to try and find that self-worth. So we're not loved unconditionally. So we believe once we do something or achieve something externally, then we'll feel enough. But it never works because you can't find self-worth externally. You can only find it internally, in the human being side of things. And I'm hoping at the backside of this pandemic that the human race gets back to that, to focus on the human being versus the human doing. Because if I asked you three right now, this is an academy and a workshop, what kind of human do you want to be this year? You'd probably say, I want to be kind, I want to be courageous, I want to be caring, I want to be confident, right? The good thing about that is you can control that 100%, right? You don't need any other conditions for you to do that. You just decide, I want to be kind, I want to be caring, and so forth. And therefore, that can become your expectation, right? Because you can control that 100%. But if it was predicated on having to do something or achieve something in terms of your professional world, there are so many things you can't control with that determining your self-worth. And if that became your expectation, focusing on something you can't control but wanting to control it is the definition of anxiety or stress or pressure or worry. So for me, it's getting back to finding self-worth internally. And that's why there's only two questions that anyone on the planet has to answer, right, to really simplify it. Who am I and what do I want? And you've got to answer it in that order, because you can't work out what you want until you work out who you are. But most of us don't want to do that because we're shit scared what we might find is maybe I'm not good enough or maybe I'm not loved enough. So we go external, right, to try and find that self-worth, but you can't find self-worth externally. And if you try, you'll only get distracted by external things like materialism. Once I buy that car or that house, then I'll feel enough, or other extrinsic motivations, money. Once I make that kind of money, then I'll feel enough, or social status. Once I'm famous, then I'll be enough, or corporate status. Once I get that promotion. And the worst one of all, which we spoke about earlier, is craving recognition. Is caring what others are thinking about us and saying about us rather than what I think about myself and what I say to myself, which was the conversation we had in the cafe, Hugh. And if you can say to yourself, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, but I care about them, you've got all the power in the world. You're totally empowered.
So can you say that again?
I don't care what anyone thinks about me, but I care about them. Because we're hardwired for connection, remember? So we still got to care about others. I just don't care what you think about me. And when you can say that, you've got the courage to fall down and get up again if you get disparaged or criticised, kind of man in the arena kind of thing by the critics, which is a whole separate discussion. You've got the courage to go after your dreams. When you fall down and get up again, you've got the courage to be disliked. You don't want to be disliked, but you've got the courage to be disliked because I no longer care what people think about me, but I care about them. You're totally empowered. But because I care about what you think about me, I'm trying to fit into what Ryan or Josh or Hugh wants me to be. And as soon as I do that, I lose my only competitive advantage on this planet. I lose my authenticity because there's only one me. So, and I think that's what's happening on the planet today is we don't have that unconditional self-worth. We're always putting conditions on it. And I think that's one of the greatest tragedies in the human race today. The research recently around kids aged, 7 to 12, in terms of what their motivations are and needs are. The study's been going for 50 years, and it's in 45 countries, and Australia is one of those countries. And in the 70s and 80s and 90s, the number one motivation for kids aged 12, 13 was to be part of a friendship group, to be part of a community in terms of a friendship group. Yeah. Number 16 was to be rich, and number 17 was to be famous. Well, from 2007 to 17, the rankings has shifted all around with the advent of reality TV and so forth. And now the number one motivation for kids is to be famous. Number 2 is to be rich. And number 16 is to be part of a community in terms of a friendship group. And you think about that, you break that down for a second. What does it mean to be famous? It means I want to be recognized. I want you to recognize me because I'm not recognizing myself unconditionally. I'm putting conditions on that. And if you don't accept yourself, you'll always compare yourself. Right? So it's one or the other. You either accept yourself unconditionally or I'm going to compare myself. And because of my negative bias, I'll always find a reason why I'm below someone else. Right? And as a consequence of that, we become the most addicted, medicated, in debt, obese adult cohort in the history of the world. So the need to be imperfect and find unconditional self-worth with that imperfection is the challenge and the goal for all of us, I guess.
So the goal is actually to be imperfect. Like that's what we should be striving for.
Yeah.
Which we already have done.
Yeah.
Like we're already that.
You can still be in search of excellence and self-improvement and be the best version of you can. So it's not to deliberately be imperfect, but it's to celebrate celebrate those imperfections, if you like. And it's that Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi, which is coming to terms with our imperfections and weaknesses and finding beauty in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're on the same journey ourselves.
So it's like it's excellence is still a thing, but even if you're the best in the world, you're still not perfect.
Yeah. There's no such thing as perfection. It's just like there's no such thing as best practice, because you can always get better. That classic illusion of knowledge.
And if the who am I question, so answering that question, if the answer is not your job, like, most people, if you say, who are you? Like, well, I'm a plumber, or I'm, it's usually people go to that. So if it's not that, how are we supposed to know who we are? Like what do you ask yourself?
Yeah. So the first thing to realize is your life story is not your life. It's just your story, and you're the author of it. So humans have this thing above our head called imagination. We're the only species that has imagination. So we're the only species that has capacity to tell stories, which can be used for good, but can also be used for evil, as we know. But because of that negative bias, the stories we tell ourselves are often more negative than they are positive, right? So the journey is to make sense of your life story and find the positive affirmation-based version of your life written by your inner fan, not by your inner critic, if you like. And there's a whole series of exercises that we can do to do that. But to your point, Ryan, it also makes sense to find your life story by pulling back the onion layers of your life and getting past just the identity and physical appearance and where you live and your nationality and your religion and your employment, and finding the depth, if you like. Yeah. Every generation has its challenges. In the 60s, it was conformity. In the 80s, it was materialism, which I was partly responsible for. And today it's depth, depth of meaning. Who am I? Where am I going? Where are we going? WTF. And if you can find that and find the human being, right, then you can go after the human doing. And the beauty of that, as I mentioned earlier, when you focus on the human being, the person you want to be, and what you can control 100% of the time, then you can go after the human doing, which is the second question. What do I want? What is my purpose? What are my values? What are my goals and needs and so forth? And for everyone, it's an exploration in order to find that. But the combination of, if you just want to do a really simple exercise, it would be, what kind of human do I want to be? And what are the things I love to do? If you just did a list of all the, the answers to those two questions, and then have this beautiful process of trying to mishmash and merge the two, I might want to be a curious golfer. Or I might be passionate about surfing, so I might want to be a confident or courageous surfer. I might want to be a playful dad or a loving husband, right? It doesn't mean, when you work out the things you love to do and the kind of human you want to be, and you control that 100% of the time, you can be that person. You don't need anyone or anything. It's not predicated on anything externally, right? Which means that you can make that an expectation. But if it's based on something you can't control or something externally, you'll always be searching, you'll always be reaching, and you'll never feel content or fulfilled, or you'll never feel enough unconditionally, because it's conditional on having to do that or achieve that thing. And my supposition is we are so distracted by the human doing, and this addiction to being busy and doing and achieving and so forth, believing that once we get there, then we'll be enough. And I've done a lot of work in the last few years in the banking industry since the Royal Commission in Australia. There is a whole generation of 50 plus alpha males who have woken up and they've achieved, but they're not fulfilled. Right? They've been extrinsically motivated, money, fame, status, and so forth. They've made an enormous amount of money, but they've woken up and the kids are all adults and moved away from home, and they're thinking, shit, what just happened to the last 2 decades in terms of my perspective, right? What was important to me as well. So, I just feel we're so distracted today in terms of our perspective. And to answer the last part of your question, I've spent my whole life working with athletes, and I will continue to do that as well. But I define an athlete now as anyone who loves to compete, have fun, and play. So we're all athletes. Exactly. It's the whole planet, if you like. There's no one who doesn't like to compete, have fun, and play games in particular. So I could be a student athlete, I could be a corporate athlete, or I could be a professional athlete. And I'm unashamedly leveraging the stories and the journeys of the Andre Agassis or the Ash Bardys or Dusty Martins, Trent Cotchins, because I've seen firsthand these athletes that are on their knees and overcome adversity and embraced vulnerability as a strength and celebrated imperfection as a strength.
Yeah.
And seen them not only become good human doings as athletes, but incredible human beings, which means they can retire and move into the next chapter of their life, knowing that what they do doesn't define who they are. And you're kind of bulletproof in that space. And so, don't get me wrong, I love that they're winning Grand Slams or premierships, but I guess the bigger KPI is how they turn out, what kind of mum or wife is Ash Barty, or, what kind of husband or mate is Dusty Martin or Trent and so forth. So
who are they if you take all the wins away?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's if you believe your self-worth is predicated on whether you win or lose a game of tennis or whatever, and you take all that baggage onto the court, that's a lot of baggage. There's a lot of shame stories based up in that. So it's actually competitive advantage to work out who you are before you work out how to hit a backhand better and so forth.
And also the flow on from that, like the work you do with Ash Barty, amazing for her, obviously, to know who she is as a person. But then she models that every time she goes on the court, her press conferences, and everyone watches it. So it's not just for her. And I know this is what inspires you. It's like you're sort of inspiring the inspirers in a way, like, because when Ash Barty then gets knocked out first round after she wins a Grand Slam, she says, "That's okay, the sun comes up tomorrow, I'll be right." And it was just like our dad, Josh, and our dad, like, he loved that. So he told us that story maybe 1,000 times. And I was thinking, I like that, because I know the person I think helped her, come to that realization. But that has a huge generation on the young people. That has a huge influence, on the generation of young people watching.
Spot on.
And so modelling that is so very powerful. On the topic of our family, just when you're talking about imperfection before, it's so true that that's what connects us. Because when we sit around for dinner, Josh, myself, mum, dad, if George is there, we don't sit around and tell stories about like, I remember how good Josh's marks were at school, or like, remember when Georgia was the lead in that, or when Hugh did that well. We don't do that. Like, we sit around and tell stories about our stuff-ups. And when mum and dad said, we're going out, but don't the three of you get on the three-wheeler and then push it up and down the side of the pool, and we did it, and I pushed them all into the bush and everyone got hurt. And like, that's the stuff we connect over now, like the stuff-ups from our childhood. But I think you're right. I think social media is pushing us completely the opposite direction. It's like, be perfect and show everyone that you're perfect as well, I think social media has a big part to play in that.
I think FOMO and FOPO. FOPO is fear of other people's opinions. I think that has a massive element in it. You can use that, right?
Oh, I absolutely will.
Might be on a T-shirt.
Oh, right.
I think that's the disease.
Yeah.
And as a consequence of caring what others are thinking about us and fearing their opinion, not wanting to be inferior or imperfect, that's creating this obsession with, what do you think? You're putting that mask on and that armor on for self-preservation purposes.
Yeah.
And so you're not seeing the realness, if you like, that you see when you're sitting around as a family and having those beautiful nuances and idiosyncrasies and taking the piss and self-deprecating humor and nicknames and so forth. And that's the gold. And that's the beauty of all this, if we can just get back to that. Things that you guys do every single day. And that's what comedy does, right? Is celebrate the nuances and then the courage to tell those stories. And storytelling is a form of imperfection as well. But if we don't lean into that, or the vulnerability to tell a story without really knowing how the story is going to take shape, then we'll just hide behind statistics and data and reports and, PowerPoint presentations, because it's safe, right? No one get fired for doing a PowerPoint presentation, but it's boring as batshit in terms of the emotional connection you get from story that educates and inspires and dials up the greatest AV that any of us have, which is our imagination and our memory. When you can bring those two together through storytelling, it's extraordinarily powerful. But what's really important is if you use those two things for yourself, is to find the positive affirmation-based versions of our stories. So, for yourself and Josh, I'll put you on the spot right now, right? If I was to ask you guys, you might have the same answer, it might be a different answer, but what's your earliest, happiest memory that you can possibly imagine? And you can draw down on a photograph if you can't actually think of what would you say off the top of your head? What would be, or one of your earliest, happiest memories? What will come to mind?
I was not expecting that question to come out where you were going.
Isn't this an academy?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you got a whiteboard in here? We can.
Well, Hugh's primed me with that memory of the way we used to run around the side of the house on the truck, the
Beautiful.
three-wheeler.
Okay,
So
three-wheeler.
you kind of put that in my mind.
How old were you?
Well, we did
Josh?
it for, I reckon we would have started when I couldn't even walk yet. You guys would have been doing it. So I reckon the action goes back before the memory does. So it would have been my whole childhood up until 10. I reckon.
Who else is in that memory?
Hugh and Georgia, our sister.
Yep, gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, if I asked you to go back to that little boy
Yeah.
in that memory with the three-wheeler and asked you to call out the words that best describes how you were feeling in that memory when you're reclaiming this earliest, happiest memory, what are the words that kind of come to mind?
Joy.
Yep.
I was going to go weightlessness was one.
Yep, beautiful.
That's
That's a great one.
You're in the pool.
Yeah, that's the time he threw me in the pool.
Yep. So you're surrounded by family.
Joy, weightlessness.
How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I guess, well, connected, but that feels like I'm kind of manufacturing that word as an older man.
Yep.
Just a sense that everything's going to be okay.
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Safe.
Yep.
But not physically safe.
Yep.
Because it was kind of dangerous as well.
Yeah.
So
but there was
Safe in a sense of belonging.
Yeah, exactly. A
But
part of
still.
something.
So if you're still doing a pretty crazy exercise, how did that make you feel? Is that excited or exhilarated?
Yeah, for sure. Excited. Yep. Yeah. To be honest, it's a strange. Talking about that part of my childhood is an interesting thing because, as you know, Hugh has talked a lot about this. Our sister having a pretty intense mental illness.
Yep.
My childhood is very much demarcated between before and after that,
Gotcha.
and the memories before that aren't as strong as I wish they were.
Yep.
So recalling that stuff is a little tricky.
Yeah.
But those are the main emotions.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. So joy, excited, weightless, happy, obviously, connected, everything is going to be okay and safe. If we did that same exercise with Hugh, right? Well, let's do it with Hugh. What's your earliest, happiest memory?
Well, I first of all, to back Josh up, I have extraordinary memories of that, but that was when I was a lot older, so they're not my earliest memories. Mine were in the backyard with Dad playing cricket and Mum.
Yep. How old were you?
Probably 4 or 5. Yeah, 4 or 5.
Yep. With your mum and dad?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mum was my bowling coach. She always wants me to point out, even though Dad was the cricketer, Mum was my bowling coach.
Love it. And similar, go back to that little boy, the 4-year-old, and what are the words that best describes how that little boy Hugh is feeling in that memory?
Like joy, like I still am seeking that high of like, just in my head, it was not the backyard, but it was the middle of the MCG. So it was like, we had gum trees. I know you're asking for feelings here, but I'm trying to conjure them up. But we had gum trees that, for me in my head, they were actually the lights of the MCG.
Yeah.
They towered over me. It was always warm in summer. It's waiting for Dad to get home from work. I'm standing outside with a cricket bat just waiting for him. Mum's there and she's like, Dad's home. And I'm like, oh my God, this is just so exciting.
So that's exciting. Yeah. Anticipation.
So just so excited, so overjoyed, so loved, just felt so loved. Felt very loved, unbelievably safe. Like that's the safest place in the world, my backyard, until it got dark and then I got quite scared. But it's quite an emotional activity to do.
Yeah, totally. And the reason I've asked you those questions, the reason you've got those tears, by the way, is that what you've both just done is reclaimed the most authentic, positive, happiest, loved version of who you are. But we forget as we get older, we get pimples and we think we've got to fit in rather than stand out and so forth. Or these shame stories start to appear where we compared ourselves to someone and came up second rate, if you like. But if you can reclaim your earliest, happiest memory, and if I did other exercises with you in terms of your life story, you'd find other derivatives of love or joy and derivatives of excited or adventurous or belonging or safe, or you know what I mean? And that's the authentic version of us. And you can hang on to those words every day, as part of the win the morning, win the day exercise. That's one of the easiest ones you can do. And when you ask Ryan about making sense of your life story, that's what they've just done. So they are excited, they are happy, they are worthy, they are loved, they are adventurous and so forth. And they can control that for the rest of their lives. So.
But it's the conditions that have happened since then that have altered that or distracted them from that.
Spot on. Yeah. Or we've just never done that exercise of literally calling that out.
Yeah.
So if I ask them to do it, find another happy memory and another one and another one, you'd start to see the connection, the correlation of language. And these are the happiest memories. So why wouldn't we hang on to those and show up from that perspective rather than one feeling that we're not good enough or loved enough, or one that we're feeling like we have to fit into someone else's definition of who we are, which is that perfection myth, if you like. So yeah, it's a quirky process, by the way, but it's just reclaiming our life story from a more positive affirmation base.
You just said the exercise of win the morning, win the day, that exercise. Can you explain that exercise?
Win the morning, win the day. Yeah. So it's just I
know it's a big part of what you do now with Mojo, Crowe, your organisation.
Yeah.
I know it's a big part of that, so I'd love to hear more.
So that moment in the morning when you first wake up and you're not quite awake yet, but you're not asleep either. You're in that kind of dozing state. That's the best time, I believe, to win the morning, win the day. And it's just a series of, I guess, exercises where we reclaim the words that best represent who we are in our most authentic, best state. And a few other. My favourite is what you, Hugh, I'm in awe of, right? Is around just being grateful, right? And just the literally the simplicity of saying, I'm so thankful and grateful for, and then whatever comes into your head, it could be the fact that you got to sleep in a bed, or you're about to have a hot shower or a hot breakfast, which a third of the world doesn't get to do those things. It could be materialistic, right? It doesn't really matter. It's just the act of being grateful, as you know better than anyone, primes that consciousness state. Once you've done that you can then go and reclaim your earliest, happiest memory and the words that best describes it. You can reclaim a courage mantra, which might be as simple as, I'm imperfect, but I'm worthy, or I am enough, or I've got this, I can handle this, or what was Cathy Freeman's, do what I know, so find out a courage mantra. There's a whole exercise to do that. You can reclaim your purpose, and if you don't have a purpose statement, you can just ask yourself a rhetorical question. How can I be the best part of someone else's day today? To be interested, not interesting. You can reclaim your values. You can reclaim, your goals and dreams, and I guess focus on the most important habits that will enable you to achieve your goals. And a habits is really just a series of steps. It's effectively an operating system, if you like. So you think of a system as just a series of steps. After I do that, then I'll do that, then I'll do that. So a good system is step 1, I wake up. Step 2, I make my bed. Step 3, I put on my gym gear and do 30 minutes of meditation or exercise. Right? After a while, you'll start to do these things automatically, and that will be the system that creates a habit. Right? A bad system is step 1, I wake up. Step 2, I hit the snooze button 3 times. And step 3, I pick up my phone and go on apps and social media for the next half hour. Right? After a while, I'll do that automatically. But the difference between those two systems over 6 weeks or 6 months in terms of your productivity or your health are literally night and day. So winning the morning, winning the day is just a series of exercises to enable you to reclaim before you show up in the world, because the media industry is predicated on negativity. The advertising industry is predicated on shame. Right? And in social media, we've got distracted with self and perfection of self in certain areas. So they're the 3 biggest storytellers on the planet. So if you don't reclaim your story before you even get out of bed, the chances are you're going to be distracted in the worst possible ways. And I genuinely believe that. The media industry in particular is creating this just extraordinary negativity around the planet with opinions and judgments on is something is good or something is bad and he's bad and so forth, and deliberately trying to create that clickbait cocktail of cortisol that's killing us, right? So get the fuck off that media platform and own your story, because then you can be more objective assessment of what you're reading or doing that particular day.
That is our promo moment right there. That is like, that is gold. And everything you're saying here, I feel like every single thing you say, I've got a question, and I think people listening go, oh, what about that? What about that? Just for everyone who is thinking, I want to know more about that, go to Ben's Instagram. Having said get off social media, go to Ben's social media. That's a terrible time to do that. But Ben, you have so selflessly put out so much of your content on your Instagram page, and so many of my good friends. And I was one of my best mates, who I still can't believe he's not the kind of person to get into the stuff that we do. Absolutely obsessed with your Friday morning. You did it through 2020, basically. Every Friday morning is a different topic, and you spoke so eloquently and so selflessly on those topics. If you go to Ben's social media channels, and it's all there, it's just brilliant. So that's just a quick promo for your stuff, I guess, Ben.
Thanks, Hugh. On that, I'm a fan of social media. I actually am, because it puts the power into the individuals. And when it's used in the right way, and you saw during the bushfires, if you track the use of social media, and during Black Lives Matter and during the pandemic, certainly in the early days, when there's an imperfect macro crisis on the planet, social media can be used in the most extraordinary way. My issue with it is just the lack of education of the human race on how to use social media, because 15 years ago when it was thrown out on the planet, it effectively democratized storytelling, right? Or journalism, if you like. Because if you study graphic design or communications or PR or marketing or advertising, you learn three things. You learn objective, you learn intent, and you learn empathy. 15 years ago, we were never taught those three things. We never learned what's the objective of this social media post, what's having empathy from the audience, or just what's the objective. But if you were to write a book, you'd think about intention, objective, and empathy for the audience and the target market. And so what we did 15 years ago, we just started focusing on ourself. Self. We became this cult of self.
Well, it's like everyone had the opportunity to build their own brand. And then all of a sudden it's like, then your brand is immediately just by default is competing with all these other brands, which are your friends.
Spot on. So suddenly I care what you think of me in myself, in my social journalistic kind of way. Hence the, exacerbation of the perfection myth, especially for young girls and so forth. So it's about educating people that, hang on a sec, it's not the best version of myself, it's the best vision for myself. And that could be my relationship with my mum, if I'm an athlete celebrating a teammate come back from injury, could be cause-related, community, it could be comedy-related because the world's so freaking serious. We just want to tell people to lighten the hell up and so forth. When you come from that intention and having empathy for that and having a specific objective to make someone laugh that's more purpose-driven, stories are everywhere. And in that regard, social media can be a beautiful tool. But in my opinion, we just haven't understood how to drive the vehicle per se and been distracted by everyone else's interpretation of it. Whereas
it's not necessarily what it is, it's how you use it.
The utility, But I have very different opinions of the media industry in terms of the extraordinary negativity, and we're getting sucked into that. And that's a separate issue.
Yeah. Okay. Well, should we, we're all right for time, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. There's so much more I want to talk about.
I know. I'm like scrambling to prioritize what's important in my head.
We'll keep going because I think I should be okay for a 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Well, should we move on to purpose then? Because you sort of...
Yeah.
Do you think?
I'm interested to know about... Yeah, we do need to get to purpose. There's another thing I want to talk to you about, and I think you've kind of explained why, but the world is more... I mean, you look at the statistics, it's not my opinion, but there's a huge increase in anxiety and anxiety disorder. And yes, sometimes that's biological and chemical, but it seems to be off the charts at the moment. Why, in your opinion, and what you see, you speak to so many people, you listen to so many people, why, in your opinion, is this happening? Anxiety just... I feel it. Like I feel around the place, people are so much more anxious, so much more on edge. Why do you feel this is the case?
The two reasons I'd say is the illusion of control and the demon of expectation. At a macro level, I'd say the conditional love that we're putting on ourselves and our self-worth and the lack of acceptance of ourselves, which means we see others not as comrades but as competitors. So it's hard for me to contribute to you guys if I see you as my competitors. But if I can accept myself, then I can have confidence in you guys as comrades, not competitors. And then I can contribute to your happiness in some way, shape or form. So definitely self-acceptance is one. The illusion of control is basically there are so many things in life that we can't control, but wanting to control it. Yeah. And it's one of the biggest things that has come out of the pandemic, that we don't do uncertainty very well. And as uncertainty is one of the presets of vulnerability, we don't do vulnerability very well either. But identifying what's your flavor of distraction, what are the things that you can't control but are wanting to control it, right? And that wanting to control something creates this expectation that can never, ever be achieved, which will cause anxiety, stress, pressure, worry, and so forth. And as a consequence of that... Could you
give an example of that for people listening who are thinking, okay, so is that like...
So if I'm an athlete... that is focusing on the other athlete, focusing on the result, focusing on what people think about me. So last year's Australian Open, I walked around with Ash Barty for all her press conferences for the first time. And she's doing different broadcasts. And I reckon I get every single press conference in different networks around the world, they asked her the same two questions. How are you handling the pressure? Right? And she knows that pressure doesn't exist unless you're focusing on something you can't control but wanting to control it. And she's human, right? So she'll get distracted as much as we will as well. But she goes, what pressure? The pressure I'm putting on myself. Well, they hate that answer. So they'll go to the next question. How are you dealing with the expectation? And she'll go, what, the expectations on myself? And they'll go, no, the expectations of the country or the expectations of the whole world, for that matter, your world number one. And she'll say, listen, dude, I can't control what you think of me, right? I can't control what you expect of me, and I can't control what you think of me. All I can control is the expectations I put on myself. And as long as I'm working my ring off, which is her vernacular for training hard, and as long as I have a crack, which is her vernacular for mindset, that's the only expectations she can put on herself, and she can control those. But if she's focusing on the outcome of a match or focusing on what media are saying or expectations of others that she obviously can't control and therefore can't live up to, she'll be constantly distracted. So the pandemic is out of our control, right? It's an uncontrollable. So identifying for all of us, it could be government regulations, it could be focusing on results. You know, we can focus on the process, but you can't focus on the outcome. So accepting the outcome will be what it'll be and focus on task and process.
And I guess the irony of all that is that uncertainty is where, this is coming from a lens of resilience, but that's where our greatest growth will take place, when we're uncertain.
Totally. That's where spontaneity is, variety, surprise, adventure, and those things. But there's the fear in us, we want to control things. And there's so many things we can't control, right? You can't control life. It's completely uncertain, unpredictable. You know, that John Lennon quote, life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. Right? If you try and control things that you can't control, you spend your whole life frustrated. Once you accept and almost embrace uncertainty in the way you embrace imperfection, and then realize the difference between a goal and an expectation. Most of us are getting so distracted, right? And athletes don't set goals today because they confuse them with expectations. And that's why athletes all over the world are taking leave of absence at a very young age, sometimes even within 2 or 3 years of going into a sport, because they get caught up in the demon of expectations. But we should all have goals, you know, big goals, you know, dreams, and dream big, because it takes the same amount of mental energy to dream big as it does to dream small. So why would we put a ceiling on our goals and dreams, right? As long as you know that there's no guarantees in life, there's no promises and no expectations that you'll achieve those goals, but you still put them out in the universe and you go after them as hard as you can, and that's called living, right? The expectation, on the other hand, is literally to focus on the things you can control and therefore can expect the outcome, which is typically how hard you train, how much you generally want something in terms of your intent, and then your mindset. Those things you can control, that can become your expectation. But if I care what my parents think of me or what my school, you know, supposedly expects of me in terms of my grades, or I expect the result, knowing that I can't control what's on the exam or I can't control how the competitors are feeling, and that becomes an expectation, I'll be just shrouded in anxiety and stress and pressure and worry and so forth, and I'll self-sabotage as a consequence of that. So the demon of expectation for me is a massive issue that's literally killing the world today, and I genuinely mean that. And this illusion of control versus letting go of the uncontrollable, identifying them first and foremost, and then letting them go and focus back on the best version of you and the things you can control. So.
I've been on a journey with that.
We all have, you seriously.
I feel like as a younger person, I'd look to a 40-year-old and go, when you're 40, you'll have everything in control, everything sorted. But like just having kids has triggered that so badly for me, as far as my psychologist said to me, like, I've become so obsessed with making sure the house is just spotless. With 2 young kids, that's a ridiculous expectation to put on myself, but I fight tirelessly to do it. And she kind of said, I feel like when things are messy in your head, you've got this need to tidy up everything physically around you. And it's very true. And it's an expectation that I've got that when I was 40, things are going to be sorted. House is going to look lovely. Kids will be sleeping, whatever. I don't know why this has come from, but I just have this, that's what I'm going through right now. It's like, how do I let go that I can't control? Like, I get home from work, the house is going to be so messy every day. There's a 1 and a 4-year-old running amok there. But I just have this expectation in my life that it has to be tidy.
That's where vulnerability is the gateway for all of this. Right? And that's why I'm just in awe of Brene and her work in this area, because if you lean into that risk of things not being perfect in the house and that, you know, emotional exposure, and you lean into that uncertainty, right, then it's okay. Right? Life can be more open and open-minded. You can be more curious and messy and so forth. But if you can't do that, right, and you want things to be certain and you want to control things that you can't control, right, the reality is that life is unpredictable and unexpected and unscripted and uncertain and so forth. And you either accept that or you suffer. It's literally that simple. You either accept the things you can't control and let them go and get them the hell out of your psychology, or you suffer because you'll be distracted by that and trying to control something you can't control. And OCD, addictive compulsive behavior, is part of that as well.
That is awesome. Yeah, accept what you can't control or suffer.
Yeah.
Even like I'm someone who I'm in my life have rarely been anxious, rarely felt anxiety, but I feel like in the last couple of months, I've been like experiencing like severe bouts of like anxiety where it's like days where I just feel so stressed and I've sort of come to realize that it is because like there are certain things that are out of control and having sort of since realized of being told by my psych that I'm a left brain person, whereas I always assumed I was a right brain, easygoing, creative. Turns out I'm not. Turns out that I need order and organization, and I need to have a plan and a routine. And when that is under attack, when or when the plans change, or when I can't do my routine, whatever that might be, that's when I get stressed. And if it happens too much, then I get this anxiety. But even though I know that, I've heard versions of people say that, or I've read versions of that to accept uncertainty, it's still so hard to do it. Like in the moment when you're stressed about something, it's such a hard, and I guess it just takes practice. But to go like, oh well, I'll just accept that, and then I'll feel good again. It's a very hard thing to do.
Totally, yeah, absolutely. It's very, very hard to do. And Hugh, you talked about getting criticised and publicly and how hard that was. Yeah, I got criticised yesterday publicly, and I found that really, really hard as well. So we're all completely human because your first instinct in the brain is to get the monkey brain to get, fight or flight, silence or violence kind of thing. So the ability to first of all just accept, Buddhism and Stoicism are probably the two philosophy and religion that if you really want to practice it in a lot further sense, the Buddhist philosophy is we should always only ever be in one of three states: the state of acceptance, the state of enthusiasm, or the state of enjoyment. If we're not in one of those three states, we're suffering because we're not at its fundamental core. We're not accepting. As humans, we do not understand how powerful acceptance is, right? So as a consequence, we've got these opinions and judgments on whether something is good or bad. And nothing is ever that good or that bad. It just is what it is.
It just is.
And once you accept that, life isn't as difficult. But if you don't accept that, life is really, really difficult, right? It's the power of acceptance that I think we've got to practice a lot more of. Doesn't mean we still want to fix things that are broken, right? Or fix our lowest set of goals. But the first state of just accepting things for what they are without a value judgment enables us to process them in the most powerful way. But the other element, what you said, when you're feeling that kind of sense of anxiety and frustration, is also self-compassion, right? And everything we're talking about is counterintuitive, unfortunately, right? How can we make it more intuitive than counterintuitive? But we're so hard on ourselves as a human race, right? And it's probably also one of the number one issues on the planet today, right? Is just we've got to cut ourselves some slack, give ourselves a break and have a bit more self-acceptance, self-love, self-worth, and self-compassion, whatever word you want to say, right? We just got to stop being so freaking hard on ourselves and accept ourselves unconditionally, right? This is my life. This is what I've got, right? Now, what can I do with that? Once you accept yourself for who you are, then the exciting things becomes, what do I do with that?
Yep.
I fall down. Okay, I've fallen down. Now, what do I do with that? So there's only ever the response to the situations of our life. So I'm living through the pandemic, right? But if once you realize your greatest growth comes from your darkest times, because it unlocks this beautiful humility and curiosity, go, right, what do I do now, right? How can I get over this? Who can help me, right? You start to turn these negatives into possibilities, if you like, and the dopamine that you get with that pattern recognition and asking yourself questions eliminates the cortisol from what's happening to the world with a pandemic. And you can override that with some of these techniques. But whoever thought that self-compassion and acceptance would be, superpowers to overcome pandemics, right?
God, I feel like I wanted to grab all that and make it my ringtone. I'm going to keep missing calls. So every time my phone rings, I'll just hear all that.
Hard to leave a message after that. There you go.
It is.
Well, should we jump on to purpose?
Yeah, we're probably only about 15 minutes and we're so unbelievably grateful for your time. So purpose, it came up in Ryan's episode, which was the end of season one, and we got a lot of people asking more questions about, I've got And just by the way, on the topic of this, like the whole theme being imperfection and vulnerability, and like Ben, you've had to do with a bit here. Like the car park I gave you to get in here, Ben actually had to climb out of the passenger side to actually get in here. And Josh's dog, the entire time, his border collie, has been knocking on the door trying to get in. This has been an imperfect hour for you. So I'm sorry about all
Love
that.
it. Love it. That's life.
Should we be letting Mac in, or is he happy there?
Later, is border collie?
Yeah.
I love border collies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Is he going to be very noisy, do you reckon?
Yeah.
We'll see.
We're about to find out.
Yeah.
We're about to find out.
The dogs, if you want to talk about unconditional love, they're the number one role model on the planet.
Mac.
That's so true.
Yeah.
It is so true.
They don't care what kind of day you've had or so forth. They'll always just wag their tail.
Yeah.
And you talk about gratitude. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Going for a walk? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
You will be guilty.
Exactly
Even
right.
though it happens every day.
Oh, totally.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I'm going for a run.
Yeah.
Well, so with purpose, it has been like when I met with you, Ben, after Hugh put me in touch with you. I mean, it was, as I said in my episode, completely life changing. Like in many ways, when I think about what you talked to me about that day, that there were a few things. There was shame. You talked to me about shame, recognizing that, and then it was purpose was the other thing. The shame I won't go into. That's in my episode, but the purpose, figuring out what my purpose statement was, I guess was something I'd only ever heard about in terms of like a company mission statement or something like that. But thinking about it in terms of what your individual purpose is, and can you, I guess, to explain the difference between like a goal and a purpose, and what a purpose statement is, and then how to figure out what your purpose statement is.
Yep, absolutely. So a goal typically is time bound, it's specific, it's measurable, it's actionable, and so forth. A purpose is something you'll never achieve, ever achieve in your whole life. But that's what gets you out of bed in the morning when you're in a shitty mood on a Monday and it's raining and so forth. Because they can always, and it can always affect the what and the how of your life, but they can never screw with the why, right? Because that's something that you control 100%, your why. You can't control the what and the how. And especially if your purpose is linked into contributing to someone else's life in some way, shape or form, to make their day, to serve them, to love them, to be interested and interesting.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate in terms of human connection, right? To dedicate your life to something bigger than yourself, beyond yourself.
Yeah.
It unlocks this extraordinary sense of contribution and meaning and fulfillment. All those words are linked into this sense of purpose, if you like. And once you can lock in on that and you start to smile and your eyes start to dilate and you think, fuck yeah, that's me. That's me. That's my life. That's what I want to go after. It doesn't matter whether you get there or not at all. What matters is the possibility, the exciting journey of kind of going after that unlocks the most amazing serotonin in your body, which is the drug you get from contributing to someone else's happiness. Once you make them happy, it also unlocks oxytocin, the happiness drug. And working out how to get there unlocks dopamine, right? The problem-solving drug, the pattern recognition drug, that kind of the aha drug. Oh. So purpose unlocks all three of the natural chemicals in our body, right? And then we go after it. And when we find it, and it's the curiosity to work out, how do I want to be remembered? Am I just here to show up and make a shitload of money and win some games of football or achieve something in my professional job? Or fundamentally, do I stand for something? I believe in something. There's something that lights me up. Yeah, there's a legacy I want to leave the planet. There's something I'm incredibly passionate about. And at my funeral, this is the stuff will be celebrated about me in terms of my eulogy, my impact on others. And the journey of unlocking that is the sixth of the six human needs, as Tony Robbins has celebrated so beautifully, which is around contribution, contributing to someone else's life. So yeah, it's really, really exciting to see someone go after that, because then that's their self-worth is not dependent on what they do or how they do it, but it's really linked into their sense of why.
And like I don't want to make this all about me. I really don't. But it was just such a pivotal moment, because essentially the difference for me was, before I spoke to you, not that I'd ever really thought about it in these terms, but I guess my purpose, the thing that I wanted more than anything, and the thing that I was trying to achieve, was to get my own TV show where I was the writer and the star, and that was the thing. Like all my heroes, what I grew up watching. And to me, it felt like so far away. And then when I spoke to you and you talked to me about like, well, that's a goal and that's a time-bound thing. And it's also something I may never achieve. which is very likely because it's very few people get their own TV show. So then when I started thinking about my purpose, and it changed from, I guess, like having my own TV show to what I think at the time I was like to spread joy through creativity and inspire others to do the same. And immediately I was just like, well, if I don't get my own show, that's okay. And then what's come from that is so many things that have made me immensely happy. And I feel like there's a contribution being made, and I can feel it making other people happy. And all of a sudden, I'm doing the thing that I wished I was doing, but now I have control of it. It really is. I really encourage everyone to look into. There's a TED talk as well, which we will link to, that you told me about, which is really helpful. But the other great example, obviously, is Andre Agassi. And if you could just tell a brief story to tell people the Andre Agassi journey from like with his dad as a child and growing up.
Before I do that, Hugh, what's your purpose? Remind me again.
To help people feel happier.
Help people feel happier. Yeah. Yep. And Josh, do you have a purpose? Yes? No. Yeah, great. Okay, well, perfect. Hedgeway into...
It's to get the dog to shut up at the moment.
No, that's a goal.
I should have been listening better, but I was joking about a dog.
So it's really important to know that there's no one way here. It's an imperfect science, and it's probably more art form and curiosity than it is a scientific formula. Do this and do this, and then suddenly. And there's some beautiful examples out there. There's the hedgehog principle. The Japanese have what's called ikigai, which is based on what you're passionate about, what you're good at, how to make $1 out of it, and the world needs it, if you like. But there's so many different approaches to it. I think that video that you're talking to referenced, is that the 5-minute purpose statement, which is effectively, I was going to do one with Josh right now. It'd be answering 4 or 5 questions. Who am I? Josh. What do I do? Who do I do it for? What do those people want or need? And how do they change as a consequence of that, right? So if I was to do that for myself, I might say, righto, who am I, Ben? Okay, what do I do? Well, you can answer that a million different ways, and that's totally okay. So I might say I help people, right? I could say I mentor or a coach or whatever. I just say I help people, right? For the simplicity of the exercise. Next question is what do they want or need? Who do I do it for? I could say people who are stuck. Okay, so I help people who are stuck. That answers the first 3 questions. The second last question is what do they want or need? Again, you can answer that a million different ways. I could answer that 5 million different ways. I could just say they want confidence and happiness. Okay, so now I help people who are stuck find confidence and happiness. Right? How do they change as a result? I don't know. Maybe they find purpose, or maybe they find unconditional love. Right? As I said, it's a spiritual, artistic kind of process to try and work it out. In its simplest form, purpose is just to do something for someone else. The great news is you get to decide what it is you want to do for them, resilience project, so forth, and who it is you want to do them for, right? And if you lift your aperture lens as high as you possibly can, you can impact the entire world. But you only need one other person or a dog to form a community in which you can contribute to that particular person's happiness or that animal's happiness. And I mean that sincerely, right? So you don't need to change the world. You could just change one person's life and affect your purpose. Yeah. Right. And if you're artistic, if you're creative, if you're in banking and so forth, if you just lift the aperture lens and not focus on the what and the how, but focus on the why, then you can take that with you forever. Again, there's no finish line, there's no guarantees, no expectations you'll actually get there, but that's just called living. Right? The greatest thing about it is it also gets out of this sense of self and fear and ego that comes with focusing on ourselves. Right. So the formula is effectively find yourself, which kind of makes sense of your story, and unconditional self-love, and lose that, not enoughness that we all have. Find yourself, then lose yourself, and find someone else to love through purpose and meaning and contribution. And if it just has a simple formula, most of us don't find ourselves. So we're constantly trying to find some external manifestation to make us happy or make us feel fulfilled. And obviously it never works. And we've all seen billionaires that take their lives because they're, they've achieved, but they're not fulfilled, if you like. So that's, I guess, in a simple way. But you could also just say, how can I be the best part of someone else's day to day? And that can start to lead you on that journey to work out, okay, what is my why, if you like. And for some people, you can do it in an hour. You are the classic, when the pupil's ready, the preacher will come, and it can come in the way of a great book or a great video or a great, article or a mentor or a framework that you can just tease out. But, Yeah.
I've actually seen, Ryan and I have discussed this behind Josh's back, but like we have seen, like Josh is you're a very different person this year to what you were last year or the year before. Like we've noticed a big change in you, and I think that's because your purpose has become your son, Charlie. Josh had a baby, first child.
Beautiful.
A year ago.
Yeah.
And I feel like you haven't articulated and sat down and write what's my purpose statement, but you've lived this new purpose, I feel. I could be wrong, but that's what Ron and I discussed, that we feel like. I was allowed to say that, but we have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what Josh. It's 2 against 1. So
your purpose is what these guys say it is. Right?
Yeah. It's about others.
Totally right.
Yeah. I care what they think about me, so that's all.
Totally.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think there's so obviously as you talk, it's just natural to sort of apply as many of your things to your own life. And there's things about the pandemic. There's Charlie being born. There's so much that I could link to moments in the last year that have sort of shifted for me. I can't see myself finding my purpose through work anymore. Gave up on that. And I think it's interesting that having never achieved success at the level of, say, these two guys next to me, sort of
as you define success,
as I define success, and as that's true, as I define success, and as a certain amount of people in the industry define success. But I think that my life changing to just really being about my son and my wife, and that's it, pretty much, has been an incredibly positive thing for my outlook and behaviour and mental health and stuff like that.
I'd argue that's the greatest purpose that anyone could ever have on the planet, is to love someone else unconditionally and help them on their journey, to love and to be loved, if you like, in terms of your relationship with your wife.
Yeah.
And in particular your son.
Yeah.
You say? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It doesn't need to be any more than that.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be my work.
Yeah, if you could celebrate, but you can bring it into your work as well. If in terms of the language that you use, it can effectively affect every aspect of your life. It doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be personal. It can be all encompassing or embracing, to love others, if you like, to bring joy into the world. You can bring that to your son and to your wife, but you can also bring it through your work as well. So it doesn't have to be limiting, if you like.
I imagine the better you get at it, the more it can spread.
The more curious you are, or the more different ways that you can bring it to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure you love your dog unconditionally as well.
I do.
I can tell by the way.
I'm just embarrassed by his behaviour today. My behaviour, truly. I could have controlled that.
Aren't we celebrating imperfections here?
Totally.
Unconditional love of your dog.
In fact, Max just wandered back to the table as if to go, and what about me?
Sorry, he's in that family.
Not wagging its tail anymore. It's dirty as. So we digress from Andre. Andre's journey to find purpose and meaning, to fast track the story. It often happens, you often find purpose, like you find your values as your darkest moments. And, he went from 100 to 141 in the world, lost in the first round, a kid ranked 400 in the world. His coach sacks him. He's at the lowest of lows, and he's standing in his hotel room in Germany, and he looks out in the street and he sees all these Germans walking, and it looks like they know where they're going. Metaphorically, it looks like they've got their shit together, and he's never felt that way. And as a consequence of that, he goes, screw this. What if I work out what I want to do and why I want to do it, why I play tennis?
Oh, he figured that out by himself.
Had an aha moment.
Oh, wow.
Right? He goes, it's not about me, right? He's at this stage in his life. And that's when he not only locked in on his purpose, but he identified his shame, which for Andre was the fear of being dumb, unintelligent, which is the number one fear for athletes. Right? The number one fear for men is looking weak, not being strong. And the number one fear for women is body image. Yeah, the number one fear for athletes is looking dumb or being unintelligent, because at a pretty young age they get put into a system, the age of 14, 15, cricketer, footballer, basketball, and even though they're following their dreams, hopefully, they see their mates go off and finish school, go to college, get jobs, and they think, shit, if this doesn't work out, maybe I'm not good enough for anything else, right? It's not real, it's not rational, it's just these stories. So he didn't want to feel that way. And he wanted to dedicate his life to other people not feeling that way either, and rebelling against education as he did. As a consequence of that, he reconnected with family, found love, reconnected with life, with his dad. He got back to number one in the world, won another 4 Grand Slams, but dedicated his life to education of people at risk of not getting an education, and has subsequently set up a multi-billion dollar business and set up 64 charter schools across North America, affecting
really?
millions of kids who wouldn't get an education. And Michelle Obama and a bunch of other ambassadors have got involved along the journey as well. So if you just think about the juxtaposition, the before and after of that, he literally just lifted the aperture lens of his life and focused on his why, not the what and not the how, right? And then the rest kind of took care of itself. The world happens for us, not to us. We just got to work out what it is we want, why we want it, throw that out in the universe and see what happens. And then life just becomes this beautiful adventure, experiment, work in progress with no expectations.
Yeah.
Right. And then from that, you have this courage to kind of go after it without any guarantee. So you can fall down, you can take the piss, you can be imperfect because you're not focused on what others think about you. You're really dedicated on that why. And that's kind of that's the antidote to so much of the distractions that I think we've got today.
Well, I can sort of say for me that's exactly what has happened for me, and you are the main reason, I would say, you and through Hugh, why my life has changed so dramatically. And for a lot of people, they probably wouldn't even think that it has, like from the external. Like I'm doing a lot of similar stuff as I was before, but my approach to it is so different. And for that exact reason, I'm open to more things in a different way because, for so many reasons. So I guess I just wanted to say that and thank you properly because it really was like I'll always remember that coffee that we had together. It was like 1 hour. It was like you were like Batman. It was just like in and out, like bang, life change. See ya, who's next?
I just want to say this publicly. It's not me. Seriously, it's you did all the heavy lifting in that relationship. All I did was put up a mirror to you and ask you a bunch of questions, but you had the courage to lean in, to be vulnerable, to identify your shame. And it got emotional and it got heavy, but you also had the courage to go through that and you came out the other side. So you're the beacon of hope and Hugh and everything you're doing here to encourage other people to kind of go on that journey, if you like. As I said at the start, the illusion of knowledge is that we've all got this figured out. I don't have this figured out at all. If I can help someone 5% of their life, then that's a huge win, right? But I think we should all be on that experimental kind of curiosity to kind of make sense of who am I from a more positive affirmation based and get to that depth. And then once then you can work out what you want in terms of your purpose.
Yeah.
But once you unlock your why, then you can go after a whole lot of other things. How you can bring that to life through your family or through your business or through any other aspects as well. Jim Carrey, his purpose is to free others from concern. He started with his comedy, but he ended up with his philanthropic work and his artwork and so forth, the work he's doing in the education system in the US. So our purpose can continuously evolve and don't have to have it locked and loaded just yet, but it's more so just have the curiosity to work out. As Mark Twain said, the two most important days in our life are the day we're born and the day we find out why, right? And he said that over 100 years ago. So this is not a new religion per se. We've just got so distracted by all this extrinsic shit and all this materialism and money and FOPO and caring what others think about us. And if we can just get back to some basic principles, which, as I said, 2,500 years old, these principles that we're talking about, we just got to kind of package it up in a way that's kind of relevant. And that's why I'm in awe of the Resilience Project and everyone else that's kind of, I feel like I'm hoping there's a bit of a groundswell around this, focus on the human being first and fuck off the human doing as an extension of that. It doesn't mean you can't go after stuff, but it doesn't define your self-worth kind of based on that.
Yeah, I can only imagine what my life would have been like if you had to grab me by the jumper.
Ben, we're going to have to let you go. I know you've got an appointment to get to. We are so unbelievably grateful that you've joined us today, and I just feel like we've done that for hours, and I feel like we need to try and get you to come back and do more because that was just, so many moments throughout that. We've talked a lot in the last few years, but I had so many moments of just aha moments in that just then, even getting simple questions you're getting me and Josh to reflect on. Like I felt enormous, pangs of love for my little brother and I'm so grateful for that. I feel that all the time, but I really felt this very strong connection to him through your questions and you have an incredible impact on the people you work with. And I see it when I see sports stars are interviewed, I listen to them and I go, I know Ben's working. I don't know that you're working with him, but I can tell Ben's working with you because it's so obvious the impact you have on people. So thank you so much. Mojo Crowe is the organisation. If you want to discover more, type in Mojo Crowe and sit back, grab a coffee or whatever you drink and just enjoy because it's just brilliant. So thank you so much. Pleasure. It's been an absolute joy. As I said, I was more excited than you guys were from coming in here. And seriously, keep on doing the brilliant work that you're doing, all three of you. I feel very grateful to be part of it.
Thank you, Ben.
Cheers, mate.
We hope you enjoyed today's class with Ben Crowe. For more information on Ben and the extraordinary work he does, please do visit his website, mojocrowe.com. Now, till next time, cheerio from me. I'm off to ride the tube and buy some crisps.